One question that came up was also like in breakout sessions was just like, what is JavaScript? You know, because like that's obviously like a huge part of like front end programming. So the idea is every time you see animation on the page, right? This is being done with JavaScript. So JavaScript is responding. In this case, JavaScript is responding to like hover events, meaning when I hover over NFL, display this. When I hover over home, make it red. How does it do that? Right? Adding a class, removing a class, essentially. And if you inspect and I look at what would I look at? I think sources. Yeah, if you look at sources, some of this content, I can also do network and refresh, and you'll see. I might have to make this smaller. Okay, here it is. Some of the content should be down here. Yeah, you see, so first of all, notice bootstrap.js. Where do you think this comes from? Right, they're using Twitter Bootstrap probably. Right, and that Bootstrap, just like you can use some of their like CSS, you can also use some JavaScript, meaning, like add a class, remove class when certain things occur. Oh, this is fest. So if you see this type of stuff, so this is all the files, like when you go to a website, it's going to request. Sorry, I didn't mean to show this. It's going, say, remember we have this like link, and then you have a link to the actual CSS. When you go to a website, it's then going to have to download this file, like ask for this file essentially from the web page. So that's what's happening with this network tab is if you go to CSS over here, and let's refresh, you can see it's asking for these CSS files, shell desktop.css, and we can go here and, view the CSS, if not copy it if we want to, right? So like this is the CSS from just related to that file. You can see various of them here. If you want to see the JavaScript, we can click on JS, right? And then here, they're using, some of these are libraries that they're using, and then some of it is custom, right? Like analytics.js, this relates to Google Analytics, so they can see when you're visiting the web page and things like that. So like, for instance, some of the click events will be used for animation and displaying. Some of the click events are used for tracking, right? Like where you're going and what you're doing and when do you decide to leave the website and things like that. What else? You can mess around with JavaScript by going to this console tab, and then you can see. So this represents the entire web page, this document thing, and then you can with JavaScript, we do have material on it, but we probably would not really get to it. You can select certain elements. Like let's say I want to select all the p tags. This is the first p tag. If you do document.querySelector all, this will give me all the p tags on the page, and then you can say loop through each one of them, hide it. You can say when someone hovers over the p tag or a list element, display this, right? So JavaScript essentially is a language that interacts with your browser and allows someone to manipulate the HTML that's being displayed without any page refresh or anything like that, right? It just can allow you to hide and display or add classes, remove classes, things like that. All right. So that's JavaScript. Like I said, we do have material on it. I don't want to. It didn't seem like we needed it too much in the past. It may come up in certain internships, but it doesn't seem like it for now. Okay. As for web pages, now that we all know about JavaScript, let me make a new directory. We'll call this sample app. So one thing just to note, when you're building a Flask application, don't name the folder Flask and don't name the file Flask. It can conflict with the library, which is named Flask, right? Let's remove it. Let me see, is there something in here? Sample app? Oh, there is. Let's remove this sample app, and then we'll just create a new one. No CD into it, nothing to see here. Let's touch. We can call this app.py, you can call it index.py, any of that is fine. And this is where we'll put our Flask app. I already have, we don't need this, I already have Flask installed. If you do not, if you do not have it installed, you can do pip3 install Flask. You can see that it's installed. If I do like pip3 list, this will list all of my pip libraries, and then you can just like press Command F or whatever, or scroll until you see the word Flask. Okay. All right. So first thing we'll do is say from the Flask library, import this thing called Flask. What is this? It's capital. What does it look like? It looks like a class, right? And that's what it is. So this is a class. You can imagine, you know, there's like class Flask, right? And then maybe an init function, right? And what you can are supposed to pass through into this init function is the name of the file, like a reference to the file. And that's this dunder name thing. When you run this, it will generally like print, just give you the name of the file. So we have, there's a little bit of deviation from that, but I don't want to get into it right now. This is essentially a reference to the name of the file, that when we're running this, right, we're saying, okay, we're creating a new instance of a Flask application, all right? Like a new instance of an app, which is generally what you'll assign it to. And this instance is being defined in this file, in the index.py file, all right? The next thing we want to do is basically we want our app to work such that when someone visits, you know, a website, like, you know, visits ESPN.com, it displays certain text. You can think of, for right now, or it displays certain HTML. For right now, you can think of HTML and like text as kind of like the same thing. You can see when you send HTML through the web, it's just one long string. It's just literally a string. So what we want to send back is, let's say we want to send, let's call this like a main page, right? And what we want to send back is hello world. So we're just like sending back data from a function, right? And what we want to have happen is we want the user, like to give the user the ability to get back this data. In other words, we want to give the user the ability to call this function, okay? So if you just, you know, if we run, it's not going to work yet. If we run this file right now, it's not going to work, right? We can do Python 3 index.py. It just runs it. It seems like nothing really happened. One way I think in the documentation it tells you to like set it up is to do export Flask app equals the name of the file. But what I generally like to do is do something like app.run, and now this will start running our website. Okay? So this is now listening for someone to make requests to our web page. The same way that, you know, ESPN is essentially listening for visitors. And when there's a visitor, it sends our browser HTML. Okay? So what we want to have happen is that when there's a visitor, we send it this content. We run this function. Okay? So we need to give the user the ability to execute a certain function. Now, right now, there actually is no way. Like, we can go here. It's going to break. And it tells us the requested URL was not found on the server. Meaning, like, it doesn't know exactly what to run. The way that we tell it what to run is we can say @app.route/, and this is for like the home directory, or the root, what's really called the root URL. Okay, so we'll see this. So now if I refresh, actually this is not going to work. I made a change. It looks good. I'm pretty sure this is correct, but we're going to notice that it's not getting, really what's happening here is it's not getting my update. What I need to do is, if I shut this down and rerun it, and now refresh, now it does get my update. So notice, so what I had to do was here, I press Control C, right, to shut this, and then I'm rerunning Python 3 index.py, okay? And then it will get any changes I make. It can be annoying to have to shut down this every time. So what you can do instead is you can put debug equals true in here. So let's shut this down. Press Python 3 index.py. We didn't make any changes yet. Let's just change hello world everyone. Refresh, and now we immediately get my changes just by pressing Command R. All right. So what we saw so far, we're going to talk more about these routes. But basically what's happening is when the user goes to the root URL, which for me is this 127.5000 slash, right? This slash is kind of like implicit here. So when you go, this could be espn.com, right? That's the root URL. For me here, it's just this string of digits. What's going to happen is we're saying when someone visits that, the root URL with a slash, run this function. And this function returns the text, hello world everyone, and therefore that's what's displayed here. Okay. If we want to give someone the ability to run, say, another function, right? Like, for instance, going back to our example, here's ESPN.com. If you go click on NBA, notice, right, it's the root URL followed by /NBA, right? So do the same thing here. Let's make a route. Let's call it /NBA. And now we can make a function called NBA. The name of this function doesn't matter. We can call it whatever. And then we'll return, welcome to NBA. So now we're kind of setting up two rules or two routes, right? The first route is, for the user to call this function, or when the user goes to slash, run this function. When the user goes to /NBA, run this function. All right, let's refresh. It seems like it broke. I just have to rerun this. Still not loving it, is it? Let's see if I click on this. Oh, I'm surprised. This could be because it's HTTP. Maybe it's HTTPS. No, the site can't provide a secure connection. That's really weird. Maybe I did something weird here. Let me take a look. App.route. Oh, this maybe should not. I think it should have a /. Let me see if I undo this, if we're back to working. No, it doesn't like this either. Weird. Let me... Look, this is really weird. Okay, this is working. I don't know what happened there. And then let's go to /NB. Oh, I didn't... now let's uncomment this. Save it. /NB. That works. I don't know what happened there, guys. I would just ignore it until it happens again. That's
what did the terminal log say?
It was saying code 400 bad request version, which made me think...
Really strange.
Yeah, I don't know. It made me think of something from the browser. Right, I don't know. But right when I opened up a new instance of Chrome, it started working again. Oh well. So the point of this is, right, we're giving the user the ability to call two different functions. And this is just a set of rules. When the user visits / run this function, return it back. When the user visits /NBA, return this function. You can put HTML inside of here. So we can make this an H1, right? And do hello everyone, and you can put like a UL and then close a UL, and then have like an LI here, and call this something, right? And now let's go back here, right? So you can put HTML here, and that will be displayed, right? Like that works out fine. Questions about this so far? So we'll build upon this, but questions about this. We talked about kind of like this is an instance of a Flask application. These are routes that were set up, and this maps to what you see when you visit the website, right? You go to the root URL. That's really the root URL slash is the equivalent, right? And that's what we're setting up here. So when you go to the root URL, display this HTML. When you go to /NBA, see this is /NBA, display, run this function and display this content.
So for the HTML tag return, is like for all the tags we have to write it over here, or we can like import from HTML file and.
Yeah, we'll start incorporating an HTML file. Like we don't have to write it. It'll be so miserable if we had to write all of our HTML in this line, for example, in this file. What we'll do is we'll have a separate HTML file and start referencing it from here. Yeah, I'll show you how to connect to that soon. Before we get there, a couple more things I wanted to show you. One is that just like you can put a breakpoint in your code, your normal Python code, you can put it here as well. So to hit the breakpoint, we have to basically get our Flask application to call this function. So the way we do that is go to /, right? And now we notice it's like it's trying to get there. It's loading, but it's paused. So here in my terminal, you can see I'm in this index.py line 10. Okay? And if you want to like debug anything in here, you can do that. What might you want to debug? There's this request. You can say, we can even do it here from Flask, import request. And now, if you look at the request, you can see this is the request that somebody made. This is actually like, this thing right here looks like you can see these alligator things, right? It kind of looks like an instance. That's what it is. You can call it that dunderdict. And you can see this is all the data. So when you make a request to Flask, it's not only keeping track of, okay, someone's asking to go to the root path, but it's keeping track of, okay, they're doing this from Google Chrome, I think. They're doing this from a Mac operating system, right? It keeps track of a lot of other information for you as well, right? And the way that you can get that is in the Flask library, you can import requests, and then once you do that, you can also reference it over here, okay? Other things, if you say make a mistake, let's say you call this function, but you forget to put a return value, right? So now I'm gonna run, hit this route, and it'll probably throw an error, right? So let's go back to here, it already did. So it says when we go here, it says the view function did not return a valid response. The function either returned none or ended without a return statement, which is correct, right? We ended without a return statement. Give me 1 second. All right, so we ended without a return statement. So the point is, like, read the error message. The other thing is you can see the same error message here in the app. So in the terminal. So when you're looking through the terminal, this looks like a mess, right? And it is kind of, but what you're looking for, this is like in the Flask library. You can see site packages, Flask app.py, right? We're in the Flask library right now. What you're looking for is the component that, is kind of like the error message or something in your code base, right? I see. You can do like raise breaking here. Do that. Right. Let's refresh. So it doesn't like this. Exceptions must arrive from basic exception. That's fine because you can see this is in my code base, right? I don't want to debug the library, but now I'm looking for a line in my code base and I find it. Index.py line 9, right? Like I gave a wrong exception, but we produced an error, which was the goal. And so then you can go to debug and say, okay, something's messed up here in line 9. All right. So the point is, to debug in Flask, one, you can put a breakpoint, right? Two, you can read, if there's an error, go to the terminal and read the error message. So look for not stuff in the Flask library, but rather code that you wrote in your application. That's what you're looking for. And it's telling you where the error is occurring. Okay? Sometimes people will even like just search. They'll say, okay, well, let's look inside the sample app, right? And this is where I have to start paying attention. Right? This is the code that I wrote. Okay, next thing is what Polly was asking about, which is, okay, we have this H1 here, but what we want to do is render this from, let's make a new folder, we'll call it views, and we'll put a index.html file inside of here, and you can say, you know, hello everyone, and then have UL, and then some LIs. Let's just put like NBA, NHL, right, MLB. Right, so you can imagine this is like the home page. ESPN. All right. So what we want to have happen is that when you go here, now it's going to render or display the content of this file. There's two steps we need to do. First, we do this in the Flask app. When we're creating the Flask app, we can specify the template folder is /views. And let's look inside this folder, right? And inside this folder, then when you go to this route, instead of just displaying this text, let's import a function called render template, right? And we will render the template / I don't even know if you need the /, I probably don't. Just render template index.html. So it's going to look inside of the views folder and look for this file and then send this back, this HTML back. I hope. Let's see. So we'll run this, we'll refresh, right? And this is working fine. Okay. Let me check out the chat. Why the import of requests? This is for debugging. You know, like, we don't need it. We're not using it in our code base right here, but you can use it later. We'll show you later on. There are ways that you can use the request thing. You know, I wonder if we can show it now. So there are times to do it. What it does for us is it gives you information about the request that the browser is making to your application. All right. So you can even see, like I showed, you can see kind of the kind of browser, the request URL it's asking for, things like that. One other thing I should just note is, remember, this is a decorator, right? We've seen this before, this little @ sign. Remember what it does? It like takes the function below and essentially passes it through as an argument. So in this case, what it's probably saying is, when someone visits the /, run this function, right? You're like passing through main page as an argument, essentially, to the route function. And if this is the first argument, when someone visits the /, run this function. When someone visits /NBA, run the function below, right? Other questions about what we covered so far? Okay, the other thing I want to show you is, you know, typically in a website, there's just like a lot of patterns that are followed. Like it's a template called a template for a reason. So if you visit, let's say we go to the Sixers, let's get to the roster. So if you go to any one of these player pages, they actually look the same, right? So this Dwayne Dedman looks very similar, right? Obviously there's a different name, there's a different picture, but the format of the page, right, is essentially identical. Like, look at it. It's identical, right? So what's happening is you're asking for information about, like, this player, and it's displaying this name and his corresponding image, right? Same thing here. And the way that you're asking for that information is through the URL, okay? So if in the first step we were essentially calling a function, the next step is to call a function with an argument, you know? So let's do /NBA / player name, okay? And this will call like a player. And then let's return, I mean, this will already break, honestly. We can watch it break. So let's go to, well, what we want to do though is like kind of somehow be able to get this player information and use it in this string. That's the goal. But let's just watch it break. Okay, so NBA / player name. So what we're saying now is if I go to /NBA, right, okay. If I go to /NBA, I think what happened was once I hit one mistake in the browser, it's like Chrome is just not letting me make another request. There we go. I think that's what we saw happen. Once it got one error message, it's like not making that request again. So anyway, now we go to /NBA that calls this. If I go to /NBA / something else, like say / Harden, okay, this is what's happening. Notice this error message. Player got an unexpected keyword argument player name. Where did this occur? This occurred, does it tell me? I wish it did. It doesn't really tell me. At least I can't see it, the line number. But the reason why this is occurring, where's this word player? Where's this thing right here? Right here, right? And it's saying it's getting an unexpected keyword argument player name. Why is that? Because essentially, we're passing through Harden over here, right? /NBA / Harden. That's going to line up to this. By virtue of the fact that I have these alligator brackets, this is saying, okay, this is essentially like an argument that then we're going to pass through my function, player name, and now I can display this over here, player name, all right. So let's see if this works. Oh, and I'm going to have to create a new one. It's like once I make a mistake, Chrome does not want to rerun it. So I'm going to go to Python 3 index.py. Let's go here. Okay, we're fine. Now let's go to this URL. We'll go to /NBA / Harden. And it'll say, welcome to the NBA page of Harden. Now I'll go Embiid. And it says, welcome to the NBA page of Embiid. So this is like a dynamic website is kind of where we're getting at. How does something like this work? Again, so sorry, I wanted to show you something else. We are specifying the argument name here in the URL. The website is saying, okay, that's good because you said it's going to be / and then this part's going to be dynamic by virtue of these kind of alligator things, right? The open and closing carets. And then we're leaving an argument here in my function. So now it's taking this Embiid, and now it's passing it through the function and returning this value. We can obviously incorporate with this too. I don't know that we have to get there right now, but we can incorporate it with this as well. All All right. If you link to your CSS, I'm just reading a question now. If you link to your CSS in index.py, do you have to render template that too? I think instead what you would do is link to the CSS in your HTML. So, right, so say you wanted to incorporate Bootstrap, you would put the link here in the HTML, and then, and you can have a separate file for the CSS, a separate folder for CSS if you have anything custom. But either way, then you'll just link to like /CSS/ index.css, and you'll do that here. So that's how you would do that. For this, like if we, right, and copy this. Is that prettier? I think it is. I can't see. Let's see. Inspect. Let's go to sources. The sources are network. Network, and if you look at the CSS, it's just a little hard. I don't know. That's what I meant, but would render template still bring your CSS over? Yeah, so render template is still bringing, still importing the CSS, because inside my HTML, you know what? It may not be in this page. It's in the, no, it is. In the index.html, we're linking to this. So it should be there somewhere. It might just be a little hard for me to find it. Yeah, I'm having a hard time, but I think it's there. Yeah, I just don't know how to make this bigger. But anyway, it should be there. So that should be fine. Cool. I'll look at it. I'll try to figure that out with the console. Other questions about what we covered, right? So what do we talk about? We talked about routes, right? That when you go visit /, it runs this function, and you're setting up a series of rules here. When you visit /, run this function below. When you visit /NBA, run this function below. Then the next thing we talked about was debugging, right? The fact that, we can use the request to kind of view the request in here. We can put a breakpoint in here, right? And then it will pause. In order to hit the breakpoint, remember what you have to do is you have to visit the correct URL so that the correct function will be run, and then it will hit your breakpoint. So if you put the breakpoint in / but you go to /NBA, right? You're not going to hit your breakpoint because this is the function that's being run. So if you want to hit this breakpoint, you have to go to /, and now we're paused, right? And now I can go over to to the terminal, and I'm about to run render template. If I want to see what render template kind of does, you can call it. Let's call render template. You can see this is, there's another way to see it. It's putting in a link, to my Bootstrap, and there's also my H1, etc. And this is the string that it will send back to the browser. And then I can type continue, and it will finish the request. So it'll keep going on, and there it is, right? What else did we learn? We learned about kind of then incorporating this render template. That what we did to accomplish this was we first had to manipulate this initialization of the Flask app, specify that we want to look for in HTML files in the views folder, and then say the name of the file here that I want to display.
Since you created that template folder has to be the views folder, can you only have the index HTML in there, or you can have another HTML or something else?
No, you can. You can put a new file. Let's call it player.html. And then H1 player page. And what would we do? Here, we would render template. Let's just comment this out. We would render template, and now have the player.html. Right? If you have even more than this, I believe you can make subfolders, right? Maybe you'll make a folder just for everything about players, and then you'll do /players, or it'll be probably players/player.html. I think that would work too. Let's take a look at that. So this will be into /NBA/Harden. Oh, I broke it, guys. Anyway, well, I'd have to figure out how to set this part up. But let's just keep it here for now. So player.html. And this should display. Oh, man. Oh, we don't have the word return. Look at me. There you go. So now player page is displaying. And what if I move this into the players folder and I do /players/player.html? Does it find that? It does. Right? I can change this and it picks it up. So you can, provide a level of organization to this. Okay, the next thing that we saw, though, was essentially how to pass arguments into my function. And the purpose of this is because we want this stuff to be dynamic, right? Like we pointed out that when you go to a page, we don't create a separate page for each player, but rather we follow like a template. And, so when someone asks for like Joel Embiid, we can render, and we'll go into a lot more detail about this. We can render information like particular to him. And the first step of that is kind of catching this argument name, right? Like I'm looking for, what was it? NBA / then the player's name. So it will be localhost. I'm just going to shut this down to make it a little easier. So it'll be localhost /NBA/Embiid. And what's going to happen? It's going to see this pattern of /NBA/something, right? Realize that you're trying to call this function and that you're trying to take this value and pass it through call this function with this as the argument, right? And then we can say, return this string. Use the argument in the return value. So NBA/Embiid. There you go. Welcome to the page of Embiid. If we do /Harden, it will say welcome to the NBA page of Harden, right? So that was the last thing that we talked about, was just using, these are like parameters essentially, right? You're in the request providing something that can vary and then getting back a different response based off of that. Okay, questions about this before I let you all read about it and then do a lab? This will take some practice, obviously. Take some getting used to. But experiment with it. Like put in breakpoints. Try to put in a breakpoint and see what happens. Like just try to get situated with this. Okay, so let me show you what we'll deploy. Okay, so we will start with this Flask quick start. Oh, we almost did deploy a lot of it. So Flask quick start, Flask intro lab. So this is just kind of like applying the quick start. Dynamic websites, that's the passing arguments through, like having that parameter that you pass through. Rendering templates. This we did not cover yet, dynamic templates in Dynamic Templates Lab. I'll deploy it, and if you are able to make some progress with it, and then we can talk about it as a group as well. All right.